Chapter 156, Power of an Encirclement. Thousand Creations was a player that sought to kill steel monsters. How many battles had he gone through because of K Sing? So when it came to PK, Thousand Creation had plenty of experience. An army of heroes? Thousand Creations didn't believe it. The player who he had stolen from wasn't some girl. How could there so many heroes just hanging around? Now that the crowd of players arrived, the answer was too clear: they were originally together. How interesting. Thousand Creations swept over the surroundings. Some of the players rushing over were far away, while some were close. In this instant, he didn't have enough time to count how them, though there were at least 20 players. Thousand Creations' neutral chaser buffed his movement speed, so he moved quickly. He saw an opening in the crowd of players and slipped into it. Bang! The other side's long-ranged gunners hadn't arrived yet, but their bullets had. Thousand Creations hastily dodged. The artillery shell exploded. The shock wave from the explosion was larger than Thousand Creations had anticipated and had unexpectedly hit his side. Thousand Creations reacted quickly. He pulled his body back in midair and steadied himself. In Glory, knockback was a type of CC effect. But with these types of shockwave attacks, their knockback's effects were more chaotic and caused the target to lose balance. However, the target could steady himself. If it wasn't done right, then the target might get knocked down to the ground. And for the CC knockdown, players had no way of countering it with normal movements. Only skills like Quick Recover could counter it. With this shot, Thousand Creations had already failed to take advantage of the key moment. The crowd of players closed in and the original opening had been repaired. All sorts of classes stood in position. The several close combat classes had already advanced and surrounded Thousand Creations. Not good. Thousand Creations had already fallen into despair. He knew that the situation was already hopeless, but he didn't want to give up. He shouted, brandished his battle lance, and rushed forward trying to take one down with him. But his hopes were all a dream, and in the end, Thousand Creations was killed off with practically zero casualties on the other side. Who are these guys? Thousand Creations, who had revived in Kanji City, thought, while sending a few names to Bound Boat, hoping that he would help him look them up. These were names which he had worked hard to get while fighting that crowd. But he had died way too quickly and wasn't able to remember too many names in that short amount of time. Huh? Why are there so many? Bound Boat asked. Don't worry about that. Just look them up for me, Thousand Creations said. Did you stir up trouble again? Bound Boat asked. Thousand Creations was silent. His existence in the guild was quite special. Usually, players like him with such a nasty habit wouldn't be kept by the big guilds. But Blue Brook Guild appreciated his skill, so they still let him into the guild. Because Thousand Creations was in a big guild, getting good equipment was much easier. For example, right now, he already had a completed Scarlet Moon set and his level 30 Coiling Snake Lance was a rare purple weapon. If he wasn't a part of Blue Brook Guild, how could he have gotten these equipments so easily? Even though the guild took care of Thousand Creations, there was no way they could support his misdeeds. Thousand Creations had no objections towards this. This was also why whether he lived or died in these large or small battles depended on himself. He could not involve the guild. As a result, this time, Thousand Creations was still planning on going in solo to resolve the problem. There was nothing wrong with using the guild's resources though. After reviving in Kanji City, Thousand Creations had to recover from his weakened state, so he slowly walked towards Line Canyon, while waiting for Bound Boat's reply. In his heart, he felt that there was something weird about those players' actions. If they were there just for leveling in the wild, 20 players in a group was a bit ridiculous. Moreover, these players were all fighting separately. What was the point in being in a group? Even Thousand Creations, with his experienced eyes of a KSER, couldn't see that these players were in a group. And since they were, why were they so scattered? What exactly was their plan? As Thousand Creations slowly walked over, his weakened state gradually disappeared. He had lost 10% of his EXP with this death. Apart from this, his equipment had also lost some durability and he lost some of his gold coins. These were all fixed. None of his equipment dropped though. In the normal servers, the chances of equipment dropping at death wasn't high. Thousand Creations, I wasn't able to figure out where these guys are from. At least, they're not from the big guilds. Bound Boat's message finally arrived. Oh, Thousand Creations wasn't too surprised. The world was wide. With so many players, how could Blue Brook Guild have information on everyone? The ones they paid closer attention to were those guilds with clubs that they were competing against. If they weren't from those guilds, then those that they knew were extremely limited. Hold back a bit. Don't stir up too much trouble in the new server. Bound Boat didn't completely block him. If Thousand Creations was the type of person that could be stopped, then he wouldn't be in that position. Bound Boat also reminded him to not bring the guild into his affairs at the very least. Although it was somewhat heartless, Thousand Creations liked this sort of special position. He slowly walked until his weakened state was completely eliminated. Only then did Thousand Creations start jogging. Jogging was faster than walking, but slower than swift running. However, swift running consumed the player's stamina, so most players jogged to hurry forward. He quickly returned to Line Canyon, but he didn't charge in. The other side had 20 or so people. If he directly challenged them, then wasn't that certain death? Thousand Creations planned on waiting for the right opportunity and then striking. He didn't care despicable or low he was. As someone who liked TKAs, such a principle practically didn't exist. If his name could be hidden like his guild's name, how great would that be? Thousand Creations lamented. He chose an entrance to Line Canyon and then sneakily headed towards that direction. Line Canyon was extremely quiet. The only sounds were the rustling of the poisonous insects there. Thousand Creations ignored these monsters and hurried over to the place where those players were. When he got close, he slowed down and after carefully analyzing the terrain, he crouched over to behind a dirt mound and snuck his head out. 1, 2, 3. From here, he could see 3 players. They were all minding their own business and fighting by themselves. Thousand Creations hadn't been too vigilant before, but now that he was more aware, he saw that although these 3 were fighting their own monsters, their positions were all in a range where they could help each other if needed. He looked again from a different angle and found 2 others. They were also fighting separately, but they maintained a distance not too far from each other. This is going to be difficult. Thousand Creations furrowed his brow. These people were ready to work together at a moment's notice, which made it difficult for him to find an opening. But why were these guys doing things like this? What were they trying to do? Thousand Creations was hiding far away from them. He switched positions many times, seeing each of the 20 or so people at least once. He pulled out a piece of paper and drew the positions for each of them. Their current positions seemed a bit different from before. These people had gathered together closer to one side. Thousand Creations looked at the paper while thinking of this. He looked at the entire drawing from afar and from an overall perspective, Thousand Creations immediately saw something. Their positions were all directed towards the dungeon entrance. Were these guys waiting to ambush someone? Were they waiting for someone to go in or someone to come out? Thousand Creations suddenly thought of someone, an extreme anomaly in the 10th server. Lord Grimm, were they waiting for him? Thousand Creations couldn't help but think of this. But these 20 or so people didn't look like they had good intentions. Even though the wind was blowing in Lord Grimm's direction, could he have angered someone? Even if he refused all of the big guilds' invite this time and ran to help Full Moon Guild, they shouldn't have gone so far as to send people out to kill him, right? Thousand Creations thought of this and sent Bound Boat another message. Are you sure these players aren't from a big guild? I'm certain that they're not from a big guild. Why? Looking at their positions, it looks like they're waiting to attack Lord Grimm, Thousand Creations said. What type of players are they? Bound Boat asked. They're outside Line Canyon Dungeon. They're acting like they're leveling on their own, but it's clear that they're in an encirclement around players coming out of the dungeon, Thousand Creations said. Who did Lord Grimm offend? Bound Boat was puzzled. I don't know either. Thousand Creations was also puzzled, when he suddenly heard a movement from nearby. Hiding behind the dirt mound, Thousand Creations immediately extended his head to look and saw that 5 players had come out of the dungeon. If that wasn't Lord Grimm and his group, then he didn't know who was. Thousand Creations wasn't yet sure whether he should give Lord Grimm a heads up, when that ambush group had already begun moving. So those guys really were looking for him? This time, Thousand Creations counted carefully. If he hadn't messed up, then there were a total of 24 people. The 24 moved out like the wind. In 1 second, 1,000 creations saw them running. And in the next, the gunners fired their bullets, the mages cast their magic, and the close combat classes rushed forward from all different directions. In particular, at the entrance, 6 characters immediately stood on guard. 1,000 creations then saw Lord Grimm suddenly lift up his battle lance and use a sky strike. This move unexpectedly launched his 4 companions into the air. 1,000 creations was taken by surprise. First, he had no idea why Lord Grimm had attacked his own allies. Second, he didn't understand how his sky strike had launched all 4 targets into the air. According to 1,000 creations' knowledge and what he knew from guides, sky strike could only launch 3 targets at once. To hit up an extra one, how fast was his hand speed? Bang! Lord Grimm had sent out a palm, unexpectedly hitting his 4 allies. The 4 flew out at the same time. Only then did 1,000 creations suddenly realize what Lord Grimm intended to do. He had impressively executed this even faster and sent his 4 allies outside of the encirclement in an instant. The formation those 24 players were in could dissolve escapes from any direction, but this method was certainly outside of their expectations. 1,000 creations had studied the paper he had drawn with their positions for a while and believed that he hadn't judged incorrectly. This move by Lord Grimm had definitely messed up the other side's plan. Pung! Another gun sound. This time, 1,000 creations saw Lord Grimm jump and use aerial fire, chasing after his 4 allies. Sky strike, falling flower palm, aerial fire. These 3 moves were completed in an instant, almost quicker than how fast 1,000 creations could think. By the time he understood what had happened, Lord Grimm's party of 5 had already completely escaped from the encirclement, heading towards his dirt mound. As for those 24 players, their carefully planned encirclement had been foiled in less than a second and were now chasing after them in chaos. Chapter 157, Running Test. Go to that dirt mound. 1,000 creations heard Lord Grimm yell this. Just as he was trying to see which dirt mound Lord Grimm was talking about, he saw 3 of the 4 players quickly rush up to in front of him. Why 3? Because when Yi Shu used falling flower palm to blow them away, they had to use quick recover in order to prevent themselves from getting knocked down. Tang Ru and Steam Bun Invasion acted skillfully. On the other hand, 7 Fields and Sleeping Moon didn't do as well. 7 Fields failed in the end and crashed to the ground. Since he had to climb back up, of course he was a bit slower than the others. Whoa! There's someone here and it looks like he's pooping, Steam Bun Invasion yelled. The 3 ran over and saw 1,000 creations crouching down vulgarly behind the dirt mound. *T, 1,000 creations disagreed with this description. He was waiting there to ambush, how could he be pooping? But worse was what came after. He heard Lord Grimm shout without any hesitation, kill him. *CKF, 1,000 creations cursed as he did a backwards roll. A scarlet blade flashed by his eyes. The fastest and fiercest on that side was that female battle mage. 1,000 creations recognized that the Scarlet Battle Lance was the level 30 purple weapon Scarlet Moon, which just barely missed him. Having missed, Soft Mist took a step forward to try again. All in all, 1,000 creations had some skill and after rolling, he returned back with a sky strike. Soft Mist sidestepped it and then with a practiced coordination, Steam Bun Invasion slyly snuck behind 1,000 creations and smashed down with a brick. At this moment, the tardy Lord Grimm finally arrived. With a glance, he recognized 1,000 creations' ID and then hastily said to Steam Bun Invasion, wait, he's not with them. You know who they are. 1,000 creations heard this and felt like Lord Grimm knew where those enemies came from, so he promptly asked. I have a rough idea, Yi Shu said. Who are they? 1,000 creations asked. How about we start running first before we start chatting? Lord Grimm led the way out. Those 4 closely followed behind and 1,000 creations had no choice and also followed along. Of those 24 pursuers, the long-ranged classes continuously fired at them. 1,000 creations madly dashed in an S-path, so that the other side had no way of accurately firing at him. He then swift ran to catch up to those 5 and found that Lord Grimm was unexpectedly teaching those 4 other players. There are 3 types of movements, walk, jog, and swift run. Swift run is the fastest, but also uses your stamina. Walking is the slowest, but it'll slowly recover stamina. Jogging is neither fast nor slow, but won't use up your stamina. Directly using Swift Run will obviously let you move the fastest in a short amount of time, but once you run out of stamina and start jogging, an experienced opponent will definitely catch you. See, look at that 1,000 creations. Right now he's using Swift Run to get past us, but this is only temporary. Everyone follow my tempo and pay attention to how I switch between these three types of movement. After half a minute, he'll be left behind. Quote. F***CK, having been used as a teaching material, 1,000 creations gloomily stopped. Just as he was about to speak, those 5 ran past him. That steamed bun invasion even asked, he suddenly stopped. What type of move is this? The I want to be blown to bits move, Lord Grimm said. Bang! An artillery shell exploded near 1,000 creations. His mind blurred and he flopped through the air. Fortunately, he was able to use quick recover in time, and after rolling, he swiftly dashed and caught up to those 5 players. He caught up again, steamed bun invasion said. This method is even worse. He was even hit by an attack, Yishu said. 1,000 creations was so angry, he spat blood. When he carefully looked at those 5 players, under Lord Grimm's constant reminders, those 5 players repeatedly switched between the 3 types of movements. There was no set tempo. They would sometimes move one way for a minute and sometimes even move another way for only 2 or 3 steps. 1,000 creations involuntarily copying what they were doing. In the end, that loud-mouthed steamed bun invasion said, "It looks like he's copying us?" Too late. His initial stamina was different from ours, so he'll definitely use up his stamina first and will be blown to bits in the end, Yishu said. It's no good if your stamina is too low, steamed bun invasion sympathized. 1,000 creations grinded his teeth. He didn't have a habit of asking others for help. At this moment, even though he copied how Lord Grimm and the others were moving, it looked like he'd have to rely on himself in the end, because that Lord Grimm said that he'd be the first to run out of stamina. 1,000 creations glanced at his stamina. It really was running low. And even though the 24 players behind him hadn't caught up, the distance between them had clearly shrunken. Hey, can we actually escape from them? 1,000 creations asked. The distance between us has shrunken? It's only temporary, Yishu replied. Sure enough, after their opponents madly swift ran at them, only a few were able to catch up. And after their stamina ran out and they began jogging, the distance between the 2 sides gradually widened. We really have pulled away, steamed bun invasion cheered. We have. Then there's no need to run anymore, Yishu laughed. Why? Because through this test, I can already tell that our enemies' skill levels aren't too high. We could even try fighting with them, Yishu said. We only have 5, 7 fields reminded. 6, no? 1,000 creations is a person too, Yishu said. This is the internet. In the internet, there's no way you can tell if the person is real or fake, steamed bun invasion said solemnly. He's spoken before, Yishu helplessly said. 1,000 creations was extremely gloomy, but at this moment, Lord Grimm stopped and turned around. Look, among those 24 players, there's only one of them that has some skill. It's that battle mage over there, Yishu said. He then had his Lord Grimm move up to face them and shout, Chen Yahui, is that you? Those 24 players stopped moving. The valley fell deathly silent. Having been called out, Chen Yahui felt extremely depressed. His plans had been ruined from the very start. Lu Hao had to take care of the team's performance, so he could no longer afford to get distracted and tangle with Yi Chu in the game. As a result, Lu Hao had handed the task of obstructing Yi Chu's progress to him. But to go against Yi Chu, what methods did he have? Without any pro players to help, there was no way he could compete in the dungeon records. After thinking for a while, in the end, he realized his greatest advantage, manpower. This time, he personally brought the guild to pioneer in the new server. His ambitions weren't small. Compared to other guilds, their manpower in the 10th server was the greatest. Originally, Excellent Dynasty had intended to compete strongly against the other big guilds and restore their former glory. But who could have known that Lord Grimm would appear and cause a storm? Right now, there was only one thing in the competition between the big guilds. It was to see who could win over Lord Grimm's help. Chen Yahui was extremely bitter. He already knew who Lord Grimm was, so he didn't have any hopes that Lord Grimm would help their excellent dynasty. He could be considered as one of the club's official staff, so he had quite a lot of knowledge on the reasons for Yi Chu's retirement. For the current Yi Chu to not deliberately look for trouble with excellent dynasty was already very nice of him. It was impossible for Chen Yahui to win over Lord Grimm, so he could only carefully prepare to fight against Lord Grimm. They originally didn't have many empty accounts left, so he specially leveled many new ones just for this occasion. After all of their trouble of catching up to Lord Grimm and reaching level 30, Chen Yahui immediately moved out without any hesitation. He wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to strike at Yi Chu. If not, then if that guy ran to some guild for shelter, then their advantage would be gone. Unfortunately, after carefully creating a formation that he thought would be impossible to break, none of the plans he had prepared were used. Lord Grimm's immediate attack to send the 4 players out of the encirclement was completely out of his expectations. Chen Yahui's numerous plans had been destroyed in an instant. Chen Yahui obviously wasn't satisfied. Even though the encirclement had been broken, he still had the advantage in numbers, so he had everyone chase them. In the end, right when it looked like they were about to escape, they suddenly stopped and then faced towards them. Your movements are too poor, Chen Yahui, Yi Shu continued to say. I've already completely seen through your group's strength. Chen Yahui stared blankly. He finally realized that their chase had been a test. That type of control over movements could be considered high-end pro-level content. There were very few normal players who could do it well. Yi Shu had tested them to immediately know whether Lu Hao or other pro-level players were among the group. If it was just more people, then there was nothing to be afraid of. What are you trying to do? Thousand Creations went over and asked him. Wipe them out, Yi Shu calmly replied. Are you crazy? Do you want to join in? Yi Shu asked. Are you, for real? If not, then why wouldn't we be running right now? Yi Shu said. There's only 6 of us. The number of people doesn't matter. In a team battle, teamwork is the most important, Yi Shu said. Fine. Then let's see just how capable you are. Thousand Creations brandished his lance and walked up. Get ready to move out, Yi Shu yelled. Yes. Ready. Forward, Thousand Creations also shouted, but Steamed Bun Invasion and Soft Mist had already rushed forward. They, along with Lord Grimm, had begun fighting. No one had come up to ask for his help. Huh? Thousand Creations stared blankly. 7 Fields and Sleeping Moon had already walked up to him. Just relax and be our support, 7 Fields said. With just this, they moved ahead and joined in the slaughter. Lord Grimm, Soft Mist, Steamed Bun Invasion stood back to back in a triangle formation. They directly stormed through the crowd of enemies. It looked as if a flood had swept over and drowned them, when blood suddenly began flying out. However, it wasn't from any of those 3, but rather from their enemies. More people really is an advantage, but there has to at least certain amount, Yi Shu said. Lord Grimm suddenly left their triangle formation and rushed out. He flew forward with a collapsing mountain towards Chen Yahui's dispatched troops. Chen Yahui's thinking was very simple too. He didn't care if others lived or died. As long as they could kill Lord Grimm, then it would be their victory. Chapter 158, He really is an expert at K-Sing. Chen Yahui's intentions were clear, but the nature of Yi Shu's attacks were even more so. Yi Shu had completely seen through Chen Yahui's plans. This collapsing mountain attacked the core of the enemy's group. The shockwave spread out. Those who reacted slower weren't able to dodge it in time. They hadn't even gotten into formation yet and many had already been hit askew. Sky Strike, Falling Flower. Lord Grimm's weapon closed and his battle lance executed 2 battle mage skills, launching 4 players into the sky. After lifting his legs and kicking another, his myriad manifestation umbrella transformed into the gun form. The bullets shot out and this player was hit back in a burst of blood. Yi Shu had fired barbecue in a straight line. This usage of the move had to be done extremely quickly. Right when the target was hit into the air, the skill had to be used. The theory behind it was the same as how witches tried to fly as low as possible. The enemy player that had been knocked back smashed into numerous others. The player hadn't flown far, but had hit 3 others. The formation Chen Yahui had tried to set up was destroyed in 3 attacks. Tang Ru and Steam Bun Invasion were now sending out attacks separately, one on the left, one on the right. They attacked incomparably fast. In just a few moments, although only a few enemies had been killed, there weren't many that were still standing. Of Chen Yahui's 24 thugs, 1 died, 13 were on the ground, and the other 10 were spinning around in confusion. Lord Grimm, Soft Mist, and Steam Bun Invasion were once again back-to-back in a triangle formation. They stood there in the middle of the circle with their weapons raised. The pressure they emitted crushed down on the enemies. Thousand Creations was stunned, completely stunned. So 6 players was unnecessary? With just these 3 players, the 24 enemy offensive was thoroughly suppressed. Thousand Creations had fought with the enemies before. Even though he had been killed extremely quickly, this only meant that the other side's strength and coordination weren't weak. But against these 3 players, why did they look like scraps of paper? It hadn't even been a minute yet and their encirclement no longer existed. Some were lying on the ground. Some were spinning around trying to find the correct direction. Some were standing still not daring to act. Strong, too strong. Thousand Creations admired them. As a person who always went solo, he always wanted to stand majestically in the midst of disarrayed enemies. And now, this dream became a reality. Even though there were only 3 people, this really was the dream he always imagined. At this moment, the other side's characters were clearly still moving, but Thousand Creations felt as if time had stopped. Because in his eyes, those guys were only background characters. They were completely ignored. In his eyes, only those 3 figures existed. Gunners, open fire. Witches, mess up their sight. Blade Masters, what are you doing? Stay in position. Summoners, you idiots. Get into position before summoning. F***CK. Interrupted again. Go F***King die. Chen Yahui's commands continued to be shouted out, but it was useless, completely useless. Bullets and artillery shells flew through the air. But in the end, they simply became background noise and added to the scene's atmosphere. They had virtually no impact. The other side's pathing and tempo were far better than their rate of fire. Witches wanted to use their quick flying to mess up their opponent's line of sight? Whenever they flew by their opponent's line of sight, they'd be swatted down and form a crater on the ground. Blade Masters stay in position? The Blade Masters were lost. What were their positions? How come it seemed like they were getting farther and farther away from the battle? As for the summoners, how terrible. Summoners had to summon their pets to help fight. However, summoning had a casting time. The battle had gone on for so long and their previously summoned pets had been killed long ago without ever recovering. No matter what direction they ran towards, every time they tried casting, a bullet would interrupt them. The unfortunate summoners all felt the same, these bullets were their most faithful summons. Whenever they started summoning, a bullet would immediately be called to them. Thousand Creations had already turned hot-blooded. He ran towards Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon and yelled, "Let's go up too." Go up to do what? Seven Fields asked. Fight, Thousand Creations said. How about we just stay out of their way? Seven Fields said. What? Get in their way? Sleeping Moon suddenly erupted. Even though he'd mixed in with Lord Grimm recently, he still hadn't forgotten their initial enmity. Lord Grimm still hadn't added him as a friend yet. Forward, Sleeping Moon unsheathed his sword and rushed forward. Thousand Creations also raised his lance and went forward too. The other side were currently being crushed into tears, when newcomers suddenly joined the battle. The situation became even more alarming initially, but after trading a few blows, some immediately yelled out excitedly, "Ha ha, these two are easy to deal with." Really, everyone grew excited. Quite a few immediately ran off to fight those two. The Lord Grimm trio unexpectedly became ignored. At this moment, Chen Yahui, Thousand Creations, Sleeping Moon all became one family. They almost died from anger. The family felt the same pressure. Chen Yahui instantly became marked by Yi Shu and the others, while Thousand Creations and Sleeping Moon became everyone's prey. Both sides' reactions were unanimous. If you can't beat them, then run. Chen Yahui went left. Thousand Creations and Sleeping Moon went right. They started running in retreat. Seven Fields hastily went to the side. He just hoped that everyone would put him as a background character. Hey, there's another one. Unfortunately, his hopes were crushed. The other side had also included him in the chase. Seven Fields' cheeks streamed with tears. He had no other choice and escaped with Sleeping Moon. The originally solemn battlefield instantly turned into a clown fiesta. Yi Shu was also speechless and sighed towards the frantically running Thousand Creations. He really is an expert at casing. Fortunately, not everyone was unfaithful. There was still a portion of them that continued to fight with Yi Shu and the others. Unfortunately, their forces had thinned and they had no way of contesting with Yi Shu and the others. Chen Yahui ran off and saw that the three hadn't chased him, so he immediately began shouting orders again. But there weren't as many people as before. And half of them were out of position, so his leading was completely pointless. Down. People continued to fall down. In Line Canyon, the sound of fighting gradually lessened. As every person fell down, the noise quieted down. Not good, Tang Ru said. Not good? The other side heard this and immediately brightened. Was it no more health or no more mana? What? Yi Shu asked. Too weak, Tang Ru said. Everyone's cheeks streamed with tears. So it was because they weren't good. Even if they're weak, we still have to focus. That's the respect our opponents deserve, Steamed Bun Invasion said. Well said, Steamed Bun, Yi Shu said. Yup, Steamed Bun Invasion was immensely satisfied and then continued to bully others. On the other side, Thousand Creations and the others were currently being bullied around. They were covering their heads and running away with their tails behind them. In the end, they didn't die because the other side felt a bit embarrassed. Their boss, Chen Yahui, had been roaring at them the entire time. If they kept on acting like they didn't hear him, that wasn't good. But just as they were about to circle back, they found that there was no need to go through that trouble. Their more loyal allies had been cleaned up well by Lord Grimm's group, who was now heading towards them. Thousand Creations and his group saw this and went hid behind Lord Grimm's trio. The remnants of the enemies couldn't hold on any longer. Their allies had either died or ran away. At this point, even Thousand Creations could recognize that Chen Yahui was the leader. Thousand Creation had once died at their hands and still had some personal enmity. He chased after him, not letting up in the slightest. Chen Yahui also kept on running. The two were of the same class, so their movement speed were about the same. But Chen Yahui was clearly slightly more skilled and their distance gradually increased. Thousand Creations immediately recalled what Lord Grimm had said about switching between the different types of movements and asked, "How should I run?" No answer. Thousand Creations looked around left and right. There was no one there. At this moment, he unexpectedly became the only one chasing. Thousand Creations promptly halted. Well, I can't chase him down anyways, Thousand Creations said. He then turned around and ran back. But when he got to Line Canyon, Lord Grimm and the others were no longer there. It looked as if the battle had never taken place. Line Canyon was already completely silent. Where'd everyone go? Thousand Creations muttered. He didn't have any of them as friends, so he had no way of asking them. He ran around Line Canyon for half an hour but couldn't find anyone. In the end, he went back to his initial position, when a light suddenly flashed outside of the dungeon and 5 players came out. Thousand Creations glanced at the 5 IDs and coughed blood. It was Lord Grimm and the others. After the battle, these 5 actually went back to dungeon. They didn't even give him a heads up. He had been looking around for the battle everywhere, but during that time, they were actually dungeoning. Hey, Thousand Creations called out to them, when the 5 entered the dungeon again. F***CKF. Thousand Creations' cheeks streamed with tears. I'm out of here. Thousand Creations turned his head and left Line Canyon. Compared to Thousand Creations, Chen Yahui was even more gloomy. He had been secretly paying attention to Lord Grimm for a long time and had prepared a meticulous plan, but when the time came, there wasn't a single chance of victory for them. Starting from the very first second, they had been completely suppressed by the other side and had to run away. On the fields of Line Canyon, Chen Yahui didn't see any of his comrades. Of those 24 players, including him, only 6 survived. The others all died. Experience, money, durability, even equipment. Chen Yahui could ignore these losses, but he still felt his heart hurt. It was like he was a student who had meticulously studied for an exam. He had grasped all of the rules for arithmetic extremely well. And after walking into the test full of confidence, he saw the test. *T. The test was on calculus. The difference was just too big. The current Chen Yahui stifled this type of deep feeling of powerlessness. Against pro players, using this type of battle to cause trouble was worthless. Chapter 159, Furry Guest. After running Line Canyon 3 times, it was around 4 in the morning. Yishu stretched and got up to move around. Seeing this, Tangru also got up to get some water. She took her teacup and slipped away to the front desk. Are those people gone? Tangru drank her tea, while asking. Who knows, Yishu said. What type of hate is there between you and them? Tangru asked. In the game, of course everyone had asked who those people were. Yishu just said a few words and left it at that. Steamed Bun Invasion didn't care. Seven Fields and Sleeping Moon always had that respectful look towards Yishu and knew in their hearts that the two parties involved weren't on the same level, so even though they were curious, they didn't question too closely. Only Tangru, who was the closest to Yishu, heard Yishu say those words and then connected them with those guys who were making trouble for him in the internet cafe last time. How do I say it? It's probably because they don't want to see me in front of them ever again, Yishu said. How did you offend them? Tangru asked. There was a time when I didn't want to see them in front of me ever again too, Yishu said. Tangru stared blankly. Even though she hadn't known Yishu for very long, she knew that he was a very carefree person. She had difficulty imagining that such a person could seriously hate someone. Can I ask why? Tangru asked. Because they weren't professional enough, Yishu said. Not professional enough? You know that guy we ran into tonight? To a certain extent, I ended that guy's pro career, Yishu said. Why? Didn't I already say it? It's because he wasn't professional enough, Yishu said. Oh, Tangru understood, you're not wrong. Of course, Yishu grinned. But you already left, so why are they still bothering you? It looks like they're afraid of you coming back. So then it looks like you were forced to leave, Tangru said. Oh, how smart, Yishu was amazed. It looks like you didn't completely cut them off, so you left them a chance to bite you back. If not, then how could you be chased and pressured by them, Tangru said. Yup. I was too lazy. I should have worked a bit harder, Yishu said. Or maybe you hadn't thought of completely cutting them off, Tangru said, but didn't wait for Yishu to reply. She raised her right arm and waved it twice. Boneyard, we can still do it 4 times, she said, while returning back to her seat. The night went by like this. After morning came, they ate breakfast and discussed things. Chen Guo woke up and saw these two looking like they were treating the game as work. While eating the breakfast those two brought back, she shook her head and scolded them. This was already a daily task in Happy Internet Cafe. After eating breakfast, the two went to rest. Tangru used to switch between the morning and afternoon shifts, but because she was now playing the game all night every day, if she took the morning shift, then she'd have to endure through the morning shift before she could sleep. Chen Guo had seen her tired face sprawled on the reception desk and couldn't bear it anymore, so she simply made it so that she only had afternoon shifts. All night was all night. She would at least have a set schedule. The day continued on like this. 11 o'clock, the internet cafe's busy day ended, while these Tuesday were just beginning. Speaking of this, Yishu's time in-game was actually a bit longer than Tangru. After all, he was playing the game when he was on shift too, while Tangru didn't have as easy as a time when she was on shift. During that time, her leveling speed wasn't high, so most of her time was spent on looking at the guides Yishu had sent to her. She would also frequently be interrupted even while doing that. When midnight approached, the team gathered, ready to challenge Desolate Land's record again. Full Moon Guild's guild leader Mapletree confidently came and narrated the practice he did that day, which earned Senior Steamed Bun's praise. But when midnight hit, Su Muqing hadn't come online. "Where's Miu Miu?" Tangru asked. After so many days of playing the game together, everyone had become quite familiar with each other. The names the girls called each other clearly showed that they were close. This one called that one Mumu. That one called this one Ruru. Neither of them cared if others felt sick hearing them. "I have no idea." Yishu was also very puzzled. If Su Muqing wasn't going to come, then she'd definitely leave him a message. But in-game or QQ, there was no sign of one. Cell phone. Yishu didn't have that yet. He didn't use cell phones. Could something have happened? Yishu muttered in his heart. He grabbed the phone next to the computer and was just about to go ask, when suddenly a customer knocked on the reception desk. "Computer." The customer's voice sounded unclear. Yishu lifted his head to look. What a guy! Was it really that cold today? This person was wearing a thick furry overcoat and a furry hat. The large furry scarf covered the person's entire face. Only 2 eyes could be seen. Every other part of this person's body was covered in fur. Yishu sighed and put down the phone. "You win. You've finally dressed in a way that even I can't recognize you." "Really?" The person that came pulled down her scarf. It looked like she was quite satisfied with her disguise. "I also felt like no one would be able to recognize me." "But don't you think that you'd stand out in the internet cafe like this?" Yishu said. "It's not like there are a lot of people here." Su Muqing turned her head and scanned the internet cafe. The customers were thinly scattered. Business during the night was naturally very different from business during the day. "You could have just stayed in your room. What was the point in running over here so late at night?" "I was bored, so I came looking to play with you," Su Muqing said. "Let me figure out where you should go sit." Yishu got up and looked around the internet cafe. Last time, Huang Shaoshan had hid up in that empty corner, where there was no lights or air conditioning, where it was dark and cold. Yishu looked around and then he patted the seat beside him, said, "How about over there?" "Not bad." Su Muqing liked it and took a seat there. Yishu helped her turn on her computer and then warned her, "This is the server computer, so don't mess around with anything. If not, then all of the internet cafe computers will die." "It's that fun." "It's not fun at all," Yishu stressed. "Hurry up and log in. We're all waiting for you," Yishu said. Okay. Su Muqing didn't take off her hat and logged into the game like this. "She's here. She's finally here." Yishu's Lord Grim was still with everyone. When Su Muqing's cleansing mist came on, she heard everyone's pleasant surprised voices. "Yeah, she's here," Yishu said, but didn't say if the person was coming directly over. "Where are you?" Su Muqing turned her head to see where Yishu and the others were and then rushed over. "Sorry, I'm late," Su Muqing greeted everyone. "It's not a problem. Being late is a girl's privilege," Steamed Bun Invasion said. Coming from this guy's mouth, no one could tell if he was joking or trying to win her favor, or maybe he was actually serious. Cough. "I won't say too much. Let's start." Yishu put on his headphones and said. Let's go. Steamed Bun Invasion seemed to regard Yishu as the commander while he was the vanguard. He loved to be at the front and was always the first to go in. Soft Mist and Mapletree also rushed in. Su Muqing's cleansing mist was just about to go in too, when Yishu told her to stop. "Take this." Yishu sent her a trade request. "What is it?" Su Muqing accepted the trade request and looked. It was a level 30 purple hand cannon. "You bought it for me?" "Of course." "How much?" 100. "How cheap?" "That's not cheap in the new server," Yishu said. "But you're rich," Su Muqing said. She obviously knew of Yishu's bets with Tiny Herb. He had won over almost the entire guild storehouse. The two chatted as they entered the dungeon. The 5 players officially started. Yi Shu and the other 3 didn't have any problems with their coordination. As for Maple Tree, everything that needed to be made clear had already been made clear. It was fortunate that he wasn't a noob and was familiar with the dungeon. After Yi Shu explained the theory behind the strategy, he grasped the concepts very quickly, but was a bit lacking in practice. However, now that Su Mucheng, Tang Ru, and Steamed Bun obtained new purple weapons, their damage output was much higher, and as long as Maple Tree wasn't too off, then they'd be able to make up for his weaknesses. As soon as these 4 entered the dungeon, they had already found their targets. Maple Tree immediately did as he was ordered the day before, and aerial fired up to the window. The 5 bullets from his aerial fire wasn't wasted either and headed towards the monsters Lord Grimm had pulled. However, when his character reached the window, the monsters that were fired at were already angrily chasing after him. Oh, Maple Tree stopped his OT halfway because those aggroed monsters were instantly taken back by Lord Grimm with a circle swing. Beautiful, Yi Shu praised him. Maple Tree shook his head. He reminded himself that he wasn't in a normal dungeon team and he had to get rid of those wrong notions. In this team, OT and so on didn't exist. All he had to do was put out damage. The fiercer he was, the faster they would advance. That was his task. As he thought, Maple Tree ferociously fired at the monsters Lord Grimm was attacking. So good, Maple Tree said. This was DPS. When he attacked before, he had to always pay attention to the mount. That truly didn't feel as good. Maple Tree fired his pistol happily. The other monsters had already been pulled over. Cleansing Mist flew up to the high grounds and attacked like she did the day before. However, today, Maple Tree didn't need Su Mucheng to tell him where those 2 monsters in the center were at. After understanding the theory behind the strategy, he could already figure out where he should be attacking. Although he could openly let out his damage, he still had to coordinate with everyone. The damage he put out couldn't just be fired out at random. This first wave of 12 monsters was cleared much faster than the day before. When the last monster died, Yi Shu glanced at the time. Sure enough, there was a big improvement. Keep it up, everyone. Let's break the record on our first try, Yi Shu said. Chapter 160, Suppressed. The Desolate Land dungeon was located at an abandoned castle. The inside had a lot of side routes, so first-time runners would often take the wrong path. And for those who were there for experience, they often took the wrong paths on purpose in order to clear the entire dungeon. As for those who were there to set a record, they naturally wanted to take the most direct path to the final boss. Even though Maple Tree's performance still wasn't perfect, there weren't any major mistakes that affected the overall situation, so their journey to the bosses could be considered as having gone smoothly. After slaughtering their way past all of the normal monsters, as well as the first and second boss, the team finally broke into the castle's rear garden. The garden's condition was similar to the broken-down castle. And waiting here was the final boss called Desolate Land Ruler Toya. Even if their way here had gone by without any mistakes, the final boss Toya was still a deciding variable. This was all because Toya was a boss with many skills. He was an abnormal entity with skills from many classes. Because there were so many skills, it meant that he had a lot of options to choose from. Toya was one of rarely seen NPCs with no fixed attack pattern. When fighting against Toya, each time would be a different experience, so the time needed to kill Toya also depended quite a bit on luck. They had to see what this guy would do this time. Fortunately, they didn't need to spend time discussing the strategy on how to deal with him. This boss tested the player's ability to adapt on the spot. After rushing into the garden, the 5 players didn't hesitate and rushed in as soon as they saw Toya. Their individual setup was similar to when they entered the dungeon. Cleansing Mist and Maple Tree, the 2 long-ranged classes, leapt to the high grounds after entering the garden. Cleansing Mist lifted her cannon and fired an anti-tank missile over. Her pulling was incomparably quick. Amidst the smoke from the explosion, Toya cursed loudly and then rushed out. He wore a dark red leather jacket and an iron chain around his waist. Hair of all different colors streamed down his head. Toya didn't have an appearance befitting a desolate land ruler and looked more like a rebellious teen. Toya shot out of the smoke. His figure shook shadow clone technique. The fake body stayed in the original position to lure in players, while the real one flashed behind cleansing mist. From a player's analysis, the usage of this instant movement technique to appear next to his target was very fierce. Standing there, cleansing mist looked like she didn't know what had happened, making Mapletree want to remind her in alarm. But before he could say anything, he heard the repeated firing of a machine gun. Beneath them, Lord Grimm had already switched his myriad manifestation umbrella into the gun form and a Gatling gun shot at Toya. Toya, who was just about to attack Cleansing Mist, was immediately hit by the line of bullets and unable to move. At this moment, Cleansing Mist turned around and used the gunner skill swing to swat Toya down from the high grounds. She then followed up with her own Gatling gun, firing at the falling Toya. Lord Grimm's Gatling gun also followed the falling Toya. The firing from the two players' guns shot out in two lines. It looked as if they were sending Toya down to the ground. The two's skilled coordination wasn't anything new to Tang-Ru and Steam Bun Invasion. But Mapletree hadn't seen it in the 3 runs done the day before and was now staring, dumbstruck. If he wasn't so stunned, as a long-ranged class, he would have also begun firing. Of course, with the target moving so fast, whether he could hit the target accurately was a big question. Soft Mist and Steam Bun Invasion didn't need any reminders. The two were already waiting in position. Lord Grimm's and Cleansing Mist's attack from both sides sent Toya to them. Tang-Ru didn't wait for Toya to hit the ground and used a circle swing. The Scarlet Moon Lance in Soft Mist's hands turned into an arc of red light, accurately stabbing the falling Toya. A large swing followed afterwards, smashing Toya into the ground. "Attack, don't daydream," Yishu called out Mapletree. Mapletree woke up and immediately began sending out skills at Toya. Soft Mist and Steam Bun Invasion, who had been beating up the knockdown Toya, jumped away in order to avoid the shockwave attack the boss would make when getting up. Toya directly leapt up and kicked towards Soft Mist. But before the kick could reach her, a large energy ball smashed into his body and after an explosion, he crashed back to the ground. Cannonball. Of course, only Su Mucheng's launcher could have fired this. Cleansing Mist's gun was now gathering energy for a laser. This time, Toya moved swiftly and quick recovered to avoid getting knocked down. After rolling, he used a roundhouse kick, a sharpshooter skill. This time, the chasing Soft Mist and Steam Bun Invasion weren't able to defend in time and the two were kicked stumbling. However, this skill didn't cause the targets it hit to be knocked to the ground. And with their mechanics, they were able to steady their balance in an instant. Yishu's Lord Grimm rushed forward and chopped with a collapsing mountain. Toya, who had just finished executing the roundhouse kick, was once again flung down. Cleansing Mist's laser shot out at this moment and Toya was hit to the ground. Shockwave. Lord Grimm didn't retreat though. He pulled out his sword and guarded against the shockwave. As he slid backwards, his sword flashed, sword draw. Whether or not sword draw could knock down the target depended on the situation. It looked like this time, the move would only cause Toya to stumble a bit. Immediately following, he lifted his leg and used the striker skill Whirlwind Kick. Unfortunately, his leg was shorter than Lord Grimm's lance and once the myriad manifestation umbrella changed into the lance form, Circle Swing was used and Toya was sent smashing into the ground again. Tang-Ru and Steam Bun Invasion still didn't have much experience. Toya had many skills, which was quite similar to unspecialized characters. Even Team Tiny Herb, those extremely experienced pro players, were a bit delayed in their decision-making because there were so many skills. Although Toya wasn't as ridiculous as unspecialized characters, it was still enough to make Tang-Ru and Steam Bun Invasion unable to react in time. For example, the two were hit by the previous roundhouse kick. But Yishu was different. No matter how many skills Toya had, he couldn't leave the boundaries of glory. And how could Yishu not be familiar with every skill? His experience and decision-making could clearly be seen now. In addition, Lord Grimm was an unspecialized character. Even though Toya had many skills, Yishu could always find a way to counter it. This was an advantage that no normal class possessed. Normal classes all had their own style. They had their own strengths and weaknesses. For example, launchers had high attack and long range, but their close combat ability was almost non-existent. They barely had any skills for it, and if they didn't think of a way to widen the distance between the enemies, then they would certainly die. Unspecialized characters could use skills from all 24 classes. Although they were all low-leveled, there were both close combat and long-ranged ones of different styles. There would always be a suitable skill to use in any situation. They didn't lose to Toya's many skills in any way. Toya was suppressed. This was something no record-setting team could ever imagine. Toya's unpredictable skills always made everyone go mad. How good the dungeon record always depended on that guy's mood. But this time, Toya looked like a trapped beast. His usual sharp claws and teeth were useless at this moment. However, their coordination wasn't as good in this battle. It was quite clear that Tang-Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion were unable to keep up with Yishu's tempo. Although Toya had a lot of variations, Yishu could keep up with all of them and always found a way to restrict them. But for others, this battle was quite complex. They didn't have that type of experience and decision-making, so they naturally had no way of coordinating with him. Tang-Ru and Steamed Bun Invasion were left almost as embarrassed as Maple Tree. They could only stupidly put out damage. The only who could echo Lord Grimm's attacks was Su Mucheng. Even though her experience and decision-making weren't as good as Yishu, she knew Yishu very well. This person, so he really isn't going all out sometimes, Tang-Ru lamented. At this moment, she had a feeling of being unable to keep up. For her, this made her feel defeated. In the past 3 times they ran the dungeon, Yishu hadn't shown such a dominating pressure here. Everyone had relied on their own skill. But today, Yishu was going all out, making them feel like they were watching a play. At this moment, Tang-Ru only had one question. When they had PKED at that time, did Yishu go all out? The battle wasn't advancing in complete silence. Lord Grimm's and Toya's skills were executed extremely quickly, so there wasn't much time to talk for the majority of it. But there were still places that Yishu had time to remind everyone. It was just that there weren't many of these types of places. Careful, almost red blood, for example, Yishu had time to remind them this. No one had any response. Red blood was red blood. Is that something you can't deal with? And sure enough, after going into red blood, Toya's attacks quickened, but the overall situation didn't change. Yishu was still suppressing him. Just from this point, they could see that the Yishu suppressing Toya before red blood wasn't his limit. If not, then once Toya went enraged, how could he have kept up? If that wasn't his limit, then what the heck was it? Tang-Ru was at a loss, but there was no way Steamed Bun Invasion could figure out all of these details. From the very start, he had been shouting and shouting just like always. When it was time to coordinate, he would coordinate. When it wasn't, he would just act rashly on his own. To him, the game was always fun no matter what.